Hey, welcome back. Simon Lees here again. It's time for a guitar lesson. This one's quite specialised, I suppose. It's only for people who've got one of these things. Yeah, I'm going to talk about using the Floyd Rose, things you can do with the Floyd Rose, the do's and don'ts. So first of all, what is it? It's a device which changes the tension of your strings. It can either tighten them or loosen them quite dramatically. So to loosen them, you push the trem towards the body of the guitar. So if I hold the guitar that way, you can see the trem kind of sticks upwards slightly, making it easier to get a bit of leverage. And if I want to loosen the strings and make the notes go lower, you push the trem down, and you can push it all the way till it touches the body. And if you do that, you can see all the strings are kind of gone a bit floppy. But then when you let it back up again, as long as you've got a good quality Floyd Rose, then all the strings will come back into tune, which is what you want. So things to do with the trem. Start off nice and mild. The original vibrato units, tremolo arms, call them what you will, they were just designed to make the notes sound a bit more pretty. So you can put vibrato on a note using the fingers of your left hand, do it the old-fashioned way. Or you can get a similar effect just by kind of moving the trem away from the body and then back down. What I tend to do is I kind of use the three fingers that aren't involved in picking on my strumming hand, and I tend to just curl my fingers around the bar. And if I'm doing that type of technique where I'm not, it's not an extreme technique, I tend not to grip the bar. It's just keep my fingers pretty loose, and just kind of rock it, If I get a little bit more aggressive with it, you can sort of, you get this kind of sickly, sort of artificial vibrato, which I ain't that keen on, but yeah, it's not a brilliant sound. The solo in Kaylee by Marillion, it sort of finishes with some real extreme. Now I'm just going to remind myself how it goes. It's just a little bit sort of. For that, I'm just using my third finger and my little finger on my picking hand just to sort of grip the trem. And sometimes, if you need to, you can get the bar in between your last two fingers and your middle finger, and sort of grip it that way. So again, I'm not sort of using my fist to sort of pump it or anything like this. It's still fairly delicate because. Depending on what type of strings you use, on this guitar really should have 10s because it's not a Strat length, it's a Gibson length, and so the strings tend to be more sensitive, so that it doesn't require a lot of movement on the trem to get the strings to move a lot. I put 9s on this guitar mainly because it's easy. And they don't get hit very hard. I don't use this for chords generally, so 9s is fine. But it makes whatever you do with the trem kind of exaggerated, you know, so you've got to be quite subtle with what you do, unless you're doing a thing called a dive bomb. You don't need to be subtle when you do a dive bomb, and a dive bomb is just making the note go down a long way, you know, and then you chop it off before it comes back up. A lot of people forget to do this, including Dave Hill from Slade. In the early 80s, they had a song called Radio Wall of Sound, and it was a masterclass in how not to use a trem. But anyway, the guys that I kind of use as benchmarks for this kind of thing, Van Halen, obviously, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, all those kind of guys, you know, Brad Gillis as well as a huge master of the trem. And these guys, they use the trem as an expressive tool, you know. I always say to people, when you're playing the guitar, try and make sure that everything, all the sounds that come out are sounds that you intended to make. Try not to sort of create anything that's accidental, or, I mean, obviously if you're mucking about, then you can experiment and things like that. But if you're actually performing something, try and make it so that you know before you play it what it should sound like, and that's you know. And then, so if you get a sound. It helps if you've listened to guitar players that use trems, so that you know what it should sound like, and then you've got to benchmark them. But yeah, so come back to the dive bomb. The technique for a dive bomb, I'm going to use the G string, because the G and the fat E strings are the two most sensitive strings on any guitar, apart from acoustics. So if I use the G string, you'll be able to hear it pretty well. I'm going to put one of my left-hand fingers on the 7th fret of the G string, and I'm kind of pressing it down as though I was playing it. But instead of plucking it with this hand, I'm going to just pull off to the open string, and I'm going to do it quite sharply, so it's quite violent. So I'm pulling the string down quite a long way and letting it ping. So you can hear that it's not a pleasant sound at all, but it's quite raucous, you know. The dive bomb part comes after. So as soon as the string's kind of pinged, then I'm just going to push the bar down. And I'm going to push it down quite a long way. Now the trick is, as I say, try not to let the note come back up again. So you don't want to hear this. You know, it sounds like one of those comedy things that you do on the trombone. It's like, it's not cool. It's not rock and roll. Don't do it. So what I do to stop the note coming back up again, a couple of things. I often use my third finger as a damping tool, and also the back of my palm, or the edge of my palm on my picking hand. That sort of, when the bar gets so far down, I sort of quickly just rotate my wrist so that my palm, or the edge of my palm, just hits those strings before the trem starts to come back up again, because it's sort of held in place partly by the strings and partly by springs which are sort of behind this cover. The strings and the springs balance each other out, so that's why when you let go of the trem, that's why it comes back up to normal, because the spring's pulling it back. So yeah, I'll just show you that again. Needs a service. So I've got my two fingers on this hand. See my thumbs over the top as well. That acts as a damper just in case the two fat strings ring out. And again, so look out for the palm action. And you see that's what you want. You don't want the sound of the note to come back up again. It just sounds shoddy, you know. The Fat E works pretty well as well, because I say that's another sensitive string on the guitar. So you can get that real growl, as the string sort of flaps against the fretboard. You can get even more of an effect with this. If you push the bar down slightly before you do the pull-off, you're making the string go slack, and that makes it easy to pull it down and get a real good powerful pull-off, So I let it come back up then. I shouldn't have done that. That's it. Cool. So that's a couple of techniques. So you got your sort of general vibrato. You got your dive bomb. You can do some cool things. Say if you've got a melody that you want to play on the guitar and make it sound a little bit more, a bit more interesting. You can push the bar down before each note, so you can sort of, or just selected notes, so you can decide which notes you're gonna kind of use the effect on, so it's not over the top, technique you can do while you're doing hammer-ons and pull-offs with your left hand. So if you just take two notes and just kind of do a trill between the two notes, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just kind of pushing the bar down and then letting it come back up by itself, so. So if I had a third note, it sounds a little bit more interesting. If I was feeling adventurous, I could sort of use my forearm. So if I wanted to do a little bit of tapping. I'm actually using part of the palm of my hand there, but I mean, that's sort of going the extra mile. Yeah, what else is there? Okay. Harmonics are always associated with using the Floyd Rose, and they do sound good. You can do the same sort of thing, do dive bombs. Most Floyd Roses these days are fitted so that you can pull back quite a bit. There's actually a cavity there underneath the Floyd Rose, which allows you to pull the trem back. And one of the tunes I always think of is The Attitude song by Steve Vai, where he kind of... yeah, so that's kind of the measure of how cool your trem is, It's like can you pull back a major third on the G string. Now I can probably do a little bit further on this one. It's like more or less a fourth. So that's like 5 frets worth. Obviously your strings won't last that long if you keep doing that. But having said that, the strings on this guitar have been on since 2009. They don't get used a lot, but I have recorded at least 4 albums using this guitar, probably more than that. So they have put up with quite a bit of abuse. There's another tune from the same album, actually, from the Steve Vai album, The Flexible, where I think it's called Viv Woman. Where you can hear this woman's voice saying, "Just go for it," and then he does this awesome sound. And what it is, it's 2 harmonics together on the 5th fret on the G and the B strings, And he starts off by pushing the bar down, so he hasn't picked the strings at this point. Whilst the bar's down and the strings are loose, then he picks the strings, uses a finger, obviously I tend to use my third finger, to just touch the G and the B strings on the 5th fret, and then strum the strings and then slowly let the bar come up. You get a kind of artifact where because the two notes are kind of changing pitch at different rates, you know, the G string's changing pitch quite a lot more than the B string is. You get this kind of weird crossover, and it's almost like a sub-harmonic gets generated, so you're almost getting 3 notes for the price of 2. It sounds really messed up, and I love it. Yeah, I need to sit down and practice that. Cool. So that's an awesome thing you can do. But I do like the idea of sort of pushing the bar down before you pick the strings, letting it come back up, and then pushing it back down again, which is what I did just now. You kind of get used to where the notes are on the G string in particular, because the G string is the best one to use for harmonics, because it isn't like a wound string. You tend to get more sustain, so that the notes last longer. It is the most sensitive string on the guitar, so that it's, you know, when you move the trem a little bit, the pitch changes a lot, so it's more effective. So, I mean, as a guide, on the 12th fret you've got G, on the 7th fret you've got D, on the 5th fret you've got G again, and on the 4th fret you've got B, I think. On the 3 and the 3rd fret, if you like, so it's sort of in between the 3rd and the 4th fret. I did mention some of these on my no finger chords video, so if you look for that one, you'll see a bit about that. That's another D, so it's like G, G, D, G, B, G. That's an F. So F is just before the 3rd fret. You get a really high G. Again, it's about the 2 and a 3rd fret. On the 2nd fret itself, you've got A, you know, so you've got quite a range of notes. There's some that you can't get. Obviously, there's no sharps on that string anyway. But, you know, it's like that there's quite a few options there for doing stuff with harmonics and using the trem. The trem, the Floyd Rose tends to make the harmonics sound more interesting, so it's... That's quite a nice effect. If you don't catch it quite right and you get a mixture of the harmonic and the actual note itself, it's quite a... It's quite difficult to get. You'd have to sort of practice exactly where your finger needs to be and how to hit the string and how long to hold your finger on and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I do like the sound of that. Okay, chords as well. You know, you can sort of... I mean, there's other things. You can use pinched harmonics, you know, that's another... They always sound great. Again, on the G string, I just tend to stick to the G string for all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm kind of running out of things to do with the trem now. But if you think of anything that I haven't mentioned, please let me know. some of you probably want to throw it in the bin, especially if you haven't been playing long and you've just had your first guitar with a Floyd Rose and you're trying to tune it. It's it's not a quick job, but I think for stuff like that, I don't know. I just think they're good fun. Oh yes, so another. You might have seen Joe Satriani doing this. He actually puts his thumb behind the bottom of the guitar body, say just below where the neck is, and he uses his index finger and maybe one of his other fingers as a way of controlling the trem. So when he does harmonics, he finds it a little bit too easy, I think, to to just stick to the traditional 12th, 5th and 7th fret and so on. So by using basically the open G string, he uses the pinched harmonic technique of just catching the string with the edge of his thumb just after he's picked it, or as he follows through with a plectrum. He picks up various little harmonic points, between the end of the neck and the bridge. That's another thing he does. You can sort of use your picking hand as a way of sort of tapping on your left hand if you're using your left hand in this way. Yeah, that was a fun. The only limit is what you can think of, but it's good if you, like any aspect of guitar playing, you can develop your own repertoire of things that you can do. When you've played these a few times, you get used to what they sound like, and then when you're in a jam situation, or you've got to write a guitar solo, you think, I'll be able to stick that technique in there, or that that sound will sort of be just the job. That's just what I'm looking for, sort of thing. So it gives you more colours to paint with. That's the way to think of it. So it's not. Some dyed in the wool kind of stuck in the mud guitar players, they sort of frown upon this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you're making sounds. Keyboard players have been doing it for years, and nobody kind of frowns on them. So the nice thing about doing it on the guitar is it's a natural thing. There's nothing fake about it. So it's just what more things that you can do with the guitar than that your piano player or your trumpet player or what won't be able to make those sounds. So embrace it is what I'm saying. Don't be put off by the purists. That's all I can think of to do with the trem. So have fun with that if you've got one, and if you haven't got one, see if your mate will lend you his. So that's it for now. I hope you can join me on the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.